He didn't marry her for love. He married her because he was lonely. And she said yes because she had nowhere else to go. In Crimson Valley, that was reason enough. The wind howled across the plains the day Sam Coulter made the offer, the kind of wind that strips roofs, bends fences, and carries secrets from one end of the valley to the other. It moved like something alive, restless, and unforgiving. And it carried loneliness with it. Sam's ranch stood tall against that wind. Strong beams, wide land, healthy cattle. But the house inside those walls was hollow. 5 winters ago, he had buried his wife beneath the cottonwood tree near the creek. Since then, the rooms echoed differently. Footsteps sounded too loud. Plates clinked too sharply. Even the fireplace seemed to burn colder. A house built for a family had become too large for one man. Sam didn't complain. He worked. Men like him didn't talk about grief. They plowed through it. But loneliness? Loneliness is patient. It waits. The morning he first saw her, the sky was gray with the promise of rain. Sam rode into town for supplies, dust swirling behind his horse. Crimson Hollow was small, one general store, one church, one saloon loud enough to pretend joy still existed. She stood outside the store like she didn't belong to any of it. Mary Whitaker. Black dress. Thin shoulders. A folded letter clutched to her chest like armor. Her husband had died the previous spring. A fever, quick and merciless. He left behind debts and a crumbling shack near Miller's Creek. The town had sympathy, but sympathy doesn't buy flour. Inside the store, whispers followed her like shadows. Poor thing won't last the winter. She's got nothing. Sam heard every word. He said nothing. He saw how she counted coins twice before placing them on the counter. He saw how she avoided meeting anyone's eyes. And when the sack of flour slipped from her hands outside, he saw something else. Pride. She tried to lift it alone. Failed. Tried again. The wind nearly knocked her backward. Sam stepped forward without speaking and lifted the sack into her wagon. "You don't have to," she said quietly. "I know," he answered, "but I want to." No pity. No performance. Just steady presence. For the first time, she looked at him fully. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not attraction. Recognition. Two people surviving different storms. 3 days later, Sam rode to her shack. The structure leaned like it had already given up. Boards warped, window cracked, the roof sagging under the threat of winter. He knocked once. Mary opened the door, startled. "Mr. Coulter?" He removed his hat. "I won't waste your time," he said. The wind pushed hard against the walls behind him. "You need a home." She stiffened. "And I need children." Silence. Not cruel. Not desperate. Honest. "I'm offering you a place at my table," he continued. "Warmth. Safety. Respect. A partnership." Her voice trembled slightly. "And what would I give you?" He met her eyes without flinching. "Peace." The word settled between them heavier than the wind. She searched his face for mockery. Found none. For a long moment, the valley seemed to hold its breath. Then a tear slipped quietly down her cheek. That was the moment the future shifted. By the first snow, Mary moved into the ranch. She brought little. Books. A tin box of memories. Her wedding ring tied to a ribbon, not worn, not forgotten. Sam didn't question it. Grief doesn't vanish. It settles. Slowly, the house changed. Fire burned longer. The scent of bread returned. Soft humming filled the kitchen. At night, they spoke by lamplight. About loss. About silence. About the children Sam had buried. About the husband Mary still dreamed of sometimes. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something steadier. Two broken souls sharing space without feeling alone. But in a town like Crimson Hollow, happiness never goes unnoticed, and the whispers were about to grow louder. The town of Crimson Hollow never stayed quiet for long. By the time Mary Whitaker moved into the Coulter Ranch, the wind had begun carrying more than dust. It carried whispers. "She's clever, I'll give her that," one woman muttered to another outside the general store. "What do you mean? Widow with debts marries the richest rancher in the valley? That's not grief. That's ambition." Mary heard it eventually. At first, she tried to ignore it. Walk past the market stalls without meeting eyes, pretend the murmurs were just the wind through the buildings. But words have a way of sticking. They cling like frost on a window pane. Inside the house, life had begun to breathe again. Soft laughter. The smell of bread baking. Sam moving around, repairing fences, tending the barn, his hands sure steady. But outside, in the town, a different rhythm was taking hold. A rhythm that whispered doubt, suspicion, and envy. Mary began to question herself. Did I only come here for shelter? Did he only need someone to fill the empty house? She didn't ask Sam yet. She wasn't ready. Spring came early that year, and with it, the promise of life returning. The valley smelled of thawing earth. Calves were born, and the fences, once battered by winter storms, stood straight and proud. Mary hummed as she worked, feeding cattle and hauling water from the creek. Sam worked alongside her. But sometimes he disappeared into the fields alone, the wind at his back, thoughts buried deep. Then came the frost, late, cruel, merciless. The delicate green shoots of corn and wheat blackened overnight. The crops they had planted with care and hope now lay lifeless in the soil. Sam stood in the field at dawn, boots crunching on the frozen earth, hands gripping his hat. He didn't curse. He didn't scream. But the tension in his shoulders spoke louder than words ever could. Mary watched him, heart tightening. She wanted to say something, offer comfort, reassurance. But the weight of the valley, the town's gossip, and the ruined crops silenced her. As if fate weren't finished, a wild stallion broke free from the north fence one afternoon. Sam chased it across the muddy fields. Rope in hand, sun beating down, dust rising from hooves and hoof prints. When he returned, his hand was badly injured, swollen, rope marks raw across his skin. "You should have waited for help," Mary said softly as she cleaned the wound. "Can't wait for help every time something goes wrong," he replied, voice low but firm. She saw something she hadn't noticed before, pride wounded, yes, but also vulnerability. Sam Coulter, the man who had rescued her, who had offered her safety, now depended on her in ways he had never admitted, and she felt it, an unfamiliar stir of fear and determination, all at once. Then the letter came, sealed, heavy, official. Sam read it in silence, standing by the window as the wind rattled the glass. His jaw tightened. Mary watched. "If we don't pay by harvest," he said finally, voice quiet but sharp, "they take the land." The words landed like stones in her chest. "What will we do?" she whispered. He looked out across the valley, the barren fields, the battered fences. The ranch he had fought so hard to maintain was now under threat. "We work," he said simply, "same as always." But she saw the tension behind his eyes. Not fear, shame. The shame of a man who had given so much to another, only to face the threat of losing it all. That night, Sam slept fitfully. Mary sat by the fire, the warm glow failing to chase the chill in her heart. Her hands trembled as she reached for the ribbon that held her late husband's ring. The memories flooded back, love lost, grief endured, loneliness endured again. And yet she had found something here, something fragile but worth fighting for. By dawn, Mary made her decision. She rode into town alone, the first light of morning painting the valley gold. Her hands were steady, her heart determined. She sold the ring, her only remnant of a past she couldn't reclaim, and returned to the ranch with the funds needed to save the land. Sam was at the gate when she returned. Concern and disbelief etched across his face. "Where were you?" "I sold it," she said simply. His eyes widened. "Mary, you gave me a home," she whispered. "Let me help keep it." For the first time, Sam Coulter's voice broke. "You didn't have to." "I know," she replied softly, "but I wanted to." The wind through the valley seemed to pause, as if the earth itself acknowledged what had just happened. Two broken souls standing together had fought the first storm and survived, and the valley would never feel the same again. By the time the first golden sunlight hit Crimson Valley, the town's whispers had grown louder. Words that had once floated in shadow now walked openly, carried by the merchants, the women at the well, the old men leaning against fence posts. "She's clever," one said. "She only married him for the ranch," another replied. "And him? He's desperate enough to let her." A third added with a smirk. Mary heard it all. The sound of teeth gritting behind polite smiles, eyes flicking her way whenever she passed the market. Every glance, every comment was a test she didn't ask for, but couldn't escape. The first confrontation came in the saloon. Sam had gone in for supplies, Mary trailing behind reluctantly. Two men, leaning on the bar, noticed her. One nudged the other. "That's the widow taking his side," the first said. The second laughed. "She's probably counting the cattle for him, too." Mary's hand trembled on her basket, but her voice stayed steady. "She's keeping the place from falling apart," she said, quietly meeting their eyes. "That's all." They smirked, unconvinced, and let the words hang in the air like smoke. Sam came up beside her, sensing the tension before she could speak. "Ignore them," he said simply. But Mary had already felt the sting, not of the frost outside, not of the wild stallion or ruined crops, but of the valley judging her heart. And in that moment, she realized something. Surviving Sam's offer wasn't enough. Surviving the town would require strength she didn't know she had. The frost had destroyed half the crops, and the stallion's rampage left the fences in need of repair. The banks let her threaten the ranch. But worse than the frost, worse than broken fences, was the whisper of betrayal. One afternoon, Mary came across Mrs. Harper, the widow who had lost her husband the winter before, sitting outside the general store. "I hear you sold your ring," Mrs. Harper said, sharp as the edge of a scythe, "to save him." Mary didn't answer. "You should know," Mrs. Harper continued, leaning closer, voice lowering conspiratorially. "People are talking about you, about him, about what you want and what you'll take." Mary's jaw tightened. She turned on her heel and walked away, the wind tugging at her skirts, the weight of suspicion pressing down. She realized that no one in this valley would see her motives clearly. Not grief, not loyalty, not love, only what they wanted to see, ambition or weakness. Back at the ranch, Sam was patching the broken fence near the north pasture. His hands were rough and bleeding from rope burns, but his eyes were sharp. Mary joined him, carrying water and a small bundle of nails. "They're talking about us in town," she said softly, voice barely above the wind. Sam didn't look at her. He hammered a post deeper into the ground. "They always will," he said. "We either build something worth keeping, or we let them win." She watched him, feeling both awe and fear. Sam Coulter had always faced the land alone, had always stood against storms and frost. But now, the storm came from people, and it cut deeper. The day of the town meeting arrived. Farmers, ranchers, merchants, and old-timers filled the dusty hall. The topic: disputes over water rights, taxes, and debts. Mary stayed behind the crowd, silent but watchful. The whispers followed her like shadows. One man, a rival rancher named Fletcher, stood and spoke louder than necessary. "Coulter's woman, she's running this place for her own gain," he said, smirking. "Soon the bank will own the ranch, and she'll take what's left for herself." The hall murmured agreement. Sam stepped forward, his tall frame cutting through the chatter. "She saved my ranch," he said, voice steady and low. "She kept it when the frost and the bank tried to take it. She didn't take a thing. She gave me a home." Fletcher laughed. "A home? You're blind if you can't see what she's doing." Mary stepped forward, heart pounding. The whole hall seemed to tilt around her. "And what I'm doing," she said, clearly, voice carrying through the room, "is standing beside the man who gave me a home. Not for land, not for cattle, for the man himself." Silence fell. For a long moment, the wind outside rattled the windows. The townspeople, and used to a woman speaking with such resolve, blinked, murmured, and turned away. Sam took her hand afterward, his eyes soft. "You didn't have to," he said. "I know," she whispered, "but I wanted to." By harvest, the frost had taken its toll. Crops were sparse. Debt loomed. The town's disapproval lingered. But inside the ranch, Mary and Sam found rhythm. They planted what they could, repaired fences, fed the cattle, and shared quiet evenings by the fire. And slowly, the valley began to notice something else: determination, respect, a quiet strength neither frost nor rumor could touch. Yet the outside world wasn't done testing them. A letter arrived from the bank, stern and final. Sam read it aloud. "If payment is not received by harvest's end, your property will be seized." Mary looked at him, fear rising, but there was no panic. "We work," Sam said, "together." And for the first time, Mary felt it clearly. Their lives were no longer just about survival. They were about defiance. Against frost, against whispers, against a world that didn't believe two broken people could build something lasting. The valley had thrown its first real storm at them. And together, they stood ready for the next. The wind came first, whispering through the valley, curling around every fence post, tearing loose shingles from the rooftops, rattling the barn doors. Crimson Valley had seen cold winters before, but nothing like this. It was early October, the frost lingering long past its welcome, and now a full blizzard was rolling in from the north. Sam and Mary were in the barn, stacking hay and checking the animals. Their breath steamed in the air, hands raw and stiff from work. The storm would hit tonight, and they had only hours to prepare. "Think we'll make it through?" Mary asked, tightening a rope around a stack of hay. Sam didn't answer immediately. His eyes scanned the horizon, cloud-laden and gray, the wind tugging at his hat. "We'll do more than survive," he said finally. "We'll protect what's ours." Mary nodded, though a knot of fear twisted in her stomach. It wasn't just the storm. Something else had started to seep through the valley: jealousy, envy, malice. Town gossip had become actions. Fences slashed, gates left open. The wild stallion had escaped once more, and there were whispers that Fletcher had deliberately loosened the barn latch, letting the animal run wild. As the first flakes began to fall, Mary went to check the northern fence, the one Sam had just repaired. Her boots sank into soft mud beneath the thin blanket of snow. She saw the fence post rocking slightly, a subtle but dangerous sign. "Sam," she called. He came running, wind whipping his coat around him, eyes sharp as steel. "It's been tampered with," Mary said, pointing to the loosened post. Sam's jaw tightened. "Fletcher." Mary shivered. It wasn't just frost or wild animals anymore. The town itself was testing them. And yet, as fear coiled in her chest, she noticed something stronger: determination. Together, they fixed the fence, muscles straining, hands raw, each movement a fight against both the storm and those who wished them ill. By evening, the blizzard had fully arrived. Snow fell in sheets, lightning slicing the sky in jagged white streaks, thunder rolling across the valley. Inside the house, Sam stoked the fire. Mary prepared hot stew, the smell of cooked meat and fresh bread filling the small kitchen. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, shaking the walls like an unseen hand. "Do you think they'll try more?" Mary asked quietly, her voice nearly drowned by the storm. "They already have," Sam replied, "and if they try again, we'll be ready." Mary's hands shook as she set the table. This was no longer just about survival. Every decision, every act of trust had weight, and yet she realized something terrifying and exhilarating at once. She was not alone. Sam would not let her face it by herself. The night deepened and the storm raged. Horses whinnied in their stalls. Calves cried. The barn groaned under the weight of snow. Outside, a shadow moved along the fence line. A figure with a lantern, carefully undoing knots, loosening posts. Mary spotted it first. "Sam," she shouted, rushing outside into the biting cold. He followed, immediately, boots crunching against snow, hands gripping the rope. The figure froze, lantern light catching a familiar face, one of the men from the town, sent to sabotage the ranch. "You think you can keep what isn't yours?" The man sneered, voice muffled by the storm. Sam didn't hesitate. He grabbed the rope, tying it around the fence post and the intruder's wrist in one smooth motion. "Try again," he said, jaw set, "and you'll find out exactly who owns this valley." The man struggled, then fled into the darkness, swallowed by snow and wind. Mary's heart pounded, cold seeping through her coat, but adrenaline kept her moving. She looked at Sam, eyes wide. "They'll keep coming," she said. "And we'll keep standing," he replied. The rest of the night was a blur of wind, snow, and vigilance. Sam checked the barn repeatedly. Mary tended to the animals, soothing them through the storm. Outside, the valley seemed like a living thing, breathing around them, testing them, demanding strength. By dawn, the storm had passed. Snow covered the fields like a white blanket. Fences were mended, animals safe, and somewhere in the distant hills, Fletcher's shadow receded, defeated for now. Mary stood beside Sam on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the snow pink and gold. Her hands were numb, her face flushed, but her spirit soared. They had survived the storm and the sabotage, together. This is ours," she said softly, voice nearly lost in the crisp morning air. Sam smiled faintly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "It always was. You just helped me see it again." And for the first time, the valley felt quiet not because of fear or loneliness, but because peace, hard-earned and hard-fought, had returned. Perfect, white-heavy checkmark. Econ Ami Part 5. 10-minute over cinematic Western story, harvest season, financial pressure, rising envy, and the slow-burn romance between Sam and Mary. Sheaf of Rice Part 5, Harvest, Hope, and Hidden Flames. The frost had passed, the blizzard was behind them, and Crimson Valley glistened under the first golden sun of early autumn. Fields stretched wide, blanketed in snow-tinged grass, a cold reminder of the work still to come. Sam and Mary emerged from the barn, boots crunching against frostbitten earth, hands stiff but spirits resolute. Harvest was no longer just a task. It was a test, not of skill, but of endurance, of heart, of will. Mary carried baskets, her breath forming clouds in the cool morning air. Sam followed behind, tightening ropes, guiding the oxen with careful precision. It was exhausting work, yet for the first time, Mary felt a strange warmth, the rhythm of the land, the satisfaction of effort, and the silent acknowledgement of partnership. The town watched closely. Fletcher and a few others prowled near the market, eyes sharp, words sharper. Whispers had grown bolder. She's taking more than he can give, one woman spat as Mary walked past with a sack of feed. And he lets her, another muttered. Mary had learned to ignore them, to let their envy slide like water off leather. But Sam, he noticed, he didn't like the attention, the judgment, the questioning of his choices. And sometimes when Mary's hands brushed against his while passing hay, or when she offered him a warm smile in the cold, he caught himself thinking, more than he should. The truth of their growing bond was slow, like the river carving its way through the valley. Neither spoke of it, but every shared task, every quiet evening by the fire, strengthened the connection between them. Yet the land was not yet generous. Half the crops had perished to frost. The rest required careful tending to survive the harvest. Mary and Sam worked tirelessly, their hands blistered, their bodies aching, yet their determination never waned. Mary's spirit shone brightest when the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the fields. She'd hum softly as she worked, and Sam would pause to listen, the corners of his lips lifting into a rare smile. It was in these moments, small, quiet, ordinary, that their hearts began to knit together. But the valley was not free of conflict. Fletcher, seeing the couple's resolve and the community's growing admiration for Mary, decided to strike. One morning, as Mary led a group of town boys to help harvest the corn, he spread rumors that the ranch was in worse debt than Sam admitted. He claimed Mary had only come for money, that the bank's letter would soon seize the land. The rumors spread quickly, reaching even the ears of those sympathetic to the couple. Some questioned their intentions, others fretted aloud. The tension in the valley was palpable, a storm of suspicion brewing even as the real harvest began. Mary confronted Sam quietly that evening. They sat together by the fire, the warm glow painting their faces with amber light. Do they believe it? All the things they're saying? She asked softly, tracing the rim of her mug with a finger. Sam's eyes didn't waver from hers. Let them talk. We know the truth. And that's enough. But Mary shook her head. It's not enough when the town begins to doubt everything we've done. Everything you've given me, everything I've tried to give back. Sam reached over, taking her hand in his. His touch was strong, grounding, yet gentle. You've given me more than any land or crops ever could, he said. You've given me a reason to keep going, a reason to hope. And don't you forget it. Her heart tightened, a flutter she couldn't ignore. Hope, yes, but something deeper, something unspoken was blooming. Harvest work continued. Days bled into nights, and Mary's courage became evident to the valley. She coordinated the help, planned the tasks, and comforted those struggling under the cold autumn sun. Her determination inspired the few who had doubted her. Even the boys she trained to gather the crops moved more confidently under her guidance. And Sam, he watched her. He noticed the way the sun caught in her hair, the way she laughed when the oxen balked, the way her eyes sparkled when she finally saw a field ready for the barn. Each glance stole something from his restraint, and he realized, slowly, painfully, that his heart was no longer his own. As dusk fell on the last day of the harvest, Mary and Sam stood together atop the ridge, overlooking the valley. The work was far from perfect, the field scarred by frost and storms, but the ranch had survived. Their survival wasn't just in the crops, it was in the strength they had built together. Mary leaned against Sam, warmth returning to her chilled fingers. We did it, she whispered. Sam smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. We did more than that. We survived them all, the frost, the storms, the whispers, the doubts. And we did it together. And for the first time in months, the valley seemed to hold its breath, acknowledging their triumph. The wind softened. The hills glowed under the fading sun. And in that moment, Mary realized that the seeds of something stronger than survival had been planted: love, respect, and a bond forged in hardship. But the valley never stayed quiet for long. Fletcher would not forget. Town jealousy simmered beneath polite nods and forced smiles. And as winter approached, a new challenge loomed. Not frost, not storms, but something unexpected that would test both Mary and Sam in ways neither had imagined. The stage was set. Their love was growing, their courage undeniable. But the world around Crimson Valley had yet to yield. By the time December rolled in, Crimson Valley was no longer just cold. It was a frozen, unforgiving expanse of windswept snow, ice-coated fences, and brittle fields. The valley, so alive in autumn's harvest glow, had turned into a white wasteland. Snow piled high along the barn walls, drifting against the gates, cutting off easy access to the creek. Even the horses stamped impatiently in their stalls, restless under blankets of frost. For Sam and Mary, survival had become a daily ritual. Each morning began before dawn, boots crunching over frozen ground, hands raw from hauling water from the semi-frozen creek, eyes scanning for any danger the winter might bring. But it wasn't just the elements that threatened them. Malice, human and natural, followed in equal measure. The first real test came on a morning thick with fog. Sam had gone to the far pasture to check the north fence, which had survived the last sabotage attempt only through relentless repair. Mary stayed near the barn, feeding the animals, brushing down the horses. A sudden scream cut through the mist. Mary froze. Her heart thudded. She raced toward the sound. Finding Sam sprawled in the snow, the wild stallion Fletcher had previously let loose, tangled in rope, thrashing dangerously. Blood trickled from Sam's hand where the rope had burned through the skin, frostbite already creeping into his fingers. Mary acted instinctively. She ran forward, grabbing another rope, looping it around the horse's neck while keeping her body low. "Steady," she shouted, voice cracking in the cold. With careful, desperate coordination, they subdued the stallion. Sam leaned heavily on Mary as they trudged back to the barn, both panting, frozen, exhausted, but alive. In that moment, the bond between them solidified like ice in the wind. "You saved me," Sam murmured, voice tight with gratitude. "No," Mary said firmly, eyes wet. "We saved each other." The storm that followed was merciless. Snow fell in sheets, wind tearing across the valley like claws, freezing the ground solid and shrouding the ranch in white. For 2 days, Sam and Mary were trapped inside, watching the valley through ice-rimmed windows. The animals huddled together for warmth, and every creak of the barn made Mary's heart jump. Meanwhile, Fletcher saw opportunity. Word spread of their struggle with the storm. Some townsfolk, sympathetic to him, whispered that Sam and Mary would fail. Fletcher himself rode near the edge of the valley, surveying their land, waiting for another chance to strike, whether through sabotage, spreading rumors, or using the weather against them. Inside the house, nights were long and cold. Mary stoked the fire constantly while Sam repaired broken tools and secured windows against gusts that sounded like wolves howling outside. One night, as the wind howled through the valley, Mary admitted her fear aloud. "What if we lose everything?" she whispered, her fingers wrapped around a mug of steaming tea. Sam looked at her, eyes fierce and steady, reflecting the firelight. "We won't," he said. "Not while we have each other. Nothing will take that from us." It was more than a promise. It was a declaration. And in that moment, both realized how much they had come to rely on one another, not just for work, not just for survival, but for hope, for courage, and for warmth in a world turned cold. The blizzard didn't end quietly. Trees fell under the weight of ice, part of the fence near the north field collapsed, and the creek froze entirely, cutting off a vital water source. Sam and Mary had to dig through snow, break ice, and guide the animals to safer areas, all while risking frostbite and exhaustion. Yet, every setback revealed their growing strength as a team. Mary's courage and resourcefulness impressed even Sam, who had spent decades surviving alone. And Sam's calm, unwavering presence reassured Mary, showing her that fear could be faced and conquered when shared. Just when it seemed the valley might finally yield to their efforts, Fletcher struck again. A neighbor noticed that a section of the barn's fence had been deliberately loosened. If the animals escaped during the storm, it would ruin everything, including the hard-won trust of the town that had started to admire Mary's determination. Sam discovered it at first light, his jaw clenched. Mary joined him, hands on her hips, snow still clinging to her coat. "We'll fix it," she said, determination in her eyes. "No," Sam said quietly, voice low, dangerous. "We'll make sure this doesn't happen again." Together, they reinforced every gate, every latch, every post. Mary suggested new methods, ropes double-knotted, extra stakes driven into frozen soil. Sam followed her lead, amazed at her instinct and precision. The ranch, battered by nature and human malice, now stood stronger than ever. That night, as snow fell silently outside, Sam and Mary sat by the fire, hands entwined. Neither spoke at first. Words were unnecessary. The day's trials, the night's survival had said enough. Mary leaned her head against Sam's shoulder. "We've endured so much," she whispered. "And we'll endure more," Sam replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But we'll do it together." The fire crackled, casting shadows on the walls, and outside, the valley lay blanketed in white silence. For the first time, Mary felt a sense of permanence. No frost, no storm, no whisper of malice could undo the partnership they had forged. And yet, deep in the town, Fletcher's eyes burned with unresolved envy. The real test was not over. Winter had hardened the valley, yes, but it had also hardened the stakes. For Sam and Mary, survival was no longer just about enduring the storm. It was about defending what they had built, their home, their love, and the fragile piece of Crimson Valley. Winter had gripped Crimson Valley in its icy hands, but it wasn't just snow and frost testing Sam and Mary anymore. Fletcher, fueled by envy and spite, had escalated from whispers and minor fence tampering to deliberate sabotage that threatened both life and land. One early morning, Mary went to the barn to feed the animals. The horses were restless, stamping and snorting in the snow. She noticed fresh footprints, large booted tracks, circling the barn like predators sizing up prey. Her stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. Sam appeared behind her, carrying a pail of feed. "I see them," he said quietly, eyes scanning the frozen field. "Fletcher's been here." Mary's jaw set. This is more than mischief now. He's trying to scare us. Together, they checked every post, every lock, every latch. In the farthest corner of the barn, they found a cut rope, a subtle but dangerous move that could have sent the stallion running again. Sam tightened his jaw, fists clenched. "He wants us to panic," he said. "We won't." That night, the sabotage turned deadly. A fire broke out in the barn, smoke curling into the icy air. Mary smelled at first the acrid sting of burning hay. She grabbed a lantern, sprinting toward the barn, heart pounding. Sam followed immediately, grabbing buckets of water from the creek. Flames licked the rafters, threatening to consume everything. Mary shouted instructions to Sam. "Keep the fire near the walls. Protect the animals." Working together, frozen hands slick with water, they fought the blaze. Hours passed. Every bucket, every splash, every frantic movement brought them closer to exhaustion. But slowly, miraculously, the fire was contained. When the last ember died, Mary sank to the floor, shivering, soot streaked across her cheeks. Sam knelt beside her, placing a strong, steady hand on her shoulder. "We did it," he said, voice quiet but firm. "We saved them. We saved the ranch." Mary looked up, eyes glimmering in the lantern light. Together, she whispered. The town, meanwhile, was split. Some admired Mary's courage and leadership. Others, fueled by Fletcher's whispers, whispered of danger, warning Sam that Mary was bold, but perhaps too bold for the fragile peace of Crimson Valley. But Mary didn't care. She had found her place, her purpose. She coordinated repairs, checked fences, ensured animals were fed. Her decisiveness inspired even the boys from town who came to help, and soon a small team of volunteers joined them, drawn by her bravery and Sam's quiet authority. Fletcher, realizing his subtle tricks had failed, grew desperate. He began openly threatening the ranch, riding past with a glare that could freeze the soul, muttering that Sam and Mary would pay for daring to succeed. Amid the chaos, Sam and Mary found moments of fragile peace. By the fire each evening, they shared small joys, a warm meal, a laugh at the horses' antics, quiet conversation about memories long buried. Mary told Sam about her childhood on the plains, her father's stubborn pride, and the loss that had once made her feel invisible. Sam shared the stories of his late wife and the boys he had lost to fever, the grief that had once consumed him. Each story, each shared memory, deepened the bond between them. Their love was no longer a whisper. It was real, forged in struggle, survival, and the recognition that they could trust no one else to stand beside them, but each other. One evening, as the wind whipped snow across the valley, Fletcher attempted another sabotage. He tried to loosen the barn door while the couple slept, intending for the animals to escape into the storm. But Mary had anticipated it. She had been up, checking the animals, sensing something was amiss. She caught him, lantern shaking in her hand, eyes blazing. "You will not touch this ranch," she said, voice firm, unyielding. Fletcher hesitated, seeing the determination in her eyes. Sam appeared behind her, calm but deadly. "Go home, Fletcher," he said quietly, "before I make sure you never return." Fletcher retreated, defeated for now. But the threat remained, a shadow on the valley, a reminder that danger was never far when envy walked the land. Through the weeks of winter, as storms raged outside and sabotage loomed unseen, Sam and Mary relied on each other more than ever. They learned to anticipate each other's moves, communicate with a glance, and trust in the partnership that had grown stronger than any wind or threat. By midwinter, the ranch stood firm. Fences were reinforced, the animals safe, and the community's admiration for Mary undeniable. Yet both knew the coming months would test them in ways far beyond cold or snow. And in the quiet moments, when the storm finally softened and the fire crackled between them, Sam brushed a strand of hair from Mary's face. "I never thought I'd find this again," he murmured. "What?" she asked, heart fluttering. "Someone to fight alongside," he said, eyes steady. "Someone I'd trust with my life. And someone I've come to love." Mary's cheeks warmed, and for the first time, she allowed herself to smile fully, letting the quiet, deep feelings she had hidden for months surface. The storm outside raged, the valley still harsh, the world unforgiving. But for Sam and Mary, a new fire had been kindled, one that no blizzard or saboteur could extinguish. By February, Crimson Valley had become a frozen prison. Snow lay thick on every fence, every roof, every branch. The wind howled across the plains, carrying ice and despair with it. Days blurred into nights beneath gray skies, and every task became a battle against the cold. Sam and Mary woke to a world transformed. The creek had frozen solid. The stockyard gates groaned under the weight of ice. The animals huddled together in silence, heads tucked beneath their blankets, and the ranch house seemed smaller than ever against the vast, white expanse outside. "Looks worse than last storm," Mary said, her voice tight with worry as she looked out over the frozen fields. "It's bad," Sam replied, hands gripping the windowsill. "But we've survived worse. We'll make it." Yet neither of them knew how close the valley had come to breaking them. Supplies were dwindling. Flour, salted meat, and firewood were nearly gone. Trips to town were impossible. Snowdrifts blocked every path, and the cold made even the shortest journey life-threatening. Mary organized what little food they had, rationing meals with meticulous care. Sam worked to chop firewood from frozen trees, splitting logs that cracked like gunfire in the icy silence. Even in hardship, the rhythm of survival bound them together. Mary moved through the house and barn like a force of will, feeding animals, stoking fires, and checking on Sam as he labored outside. "You've got to rest, Sam," she said one evening, pulling off his wet gloves. "You can't chop all that wood alone." "I can," he said quietly, exhaustion etched into his face. "But I don't have to, with you here." Their eyes met, the firelight catching the unsaid words between them. In the long, white nights, love was no longer a whisper. It was a constant warmth, a steady pulse beneath the frost. Fletcher, seeing the couple's endurance, grew increasingly desperate. His jealousy and spite had transformed into active malice. One night, under cover of darkness, he attempted to sabotage the barn's water supply. The creek near the stockyard had frozen over, but Fletcher had been clever. He tried to block the few remaining water sources, hoping to weaken both the animals and the ranchers. Mary caught him in the act, lantern shaking, eyes fierce. "I told you to stay away," she shouted. Fletcher smirked, defiance burning in his cold eyes. "You can't stop what's coming," he hissed, vanishing into the windswept night before Sam could reach him. The threat was no longer idle, it was real. The next morning, they discovered the damage. The few buckets of water left for the animals had been contaminated with snowmelt filled with debris, almost enough to make the livestock sick. Panic clawed at Mary's chest, but Sam remained calm. "We fix it," he said, determination in his voice. "No one breaks us." Together, they hauled snow, melted it over the fire, and carried water to every pen. Frostbitten fingers and frozen boots did not deter them. They worked from dawn to dusk, moving in perfect coordination, Sam lifting heavy pails, Mary directing and tending to the animals' needs. In that extreme winter, their partnership became seamless. Words were few, but every action mattered. Every glance, every motion, every nod communicated trust and reliance born of shared struggle. Food ran perilously low. By the third week of the storm, Mary and Sam were forced to ration even more strictly. For 2 days, they survived on oatmeal and whatever dried meat remained. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the storm made the world feel smaller, colder, and more isolated than ever. Yet, amidst the danger, their hearts grew bolder. Each night, they huddled together near the fire, speaking softly of hope, dreams, and the life they were slowly rebuilding. Every whispered laugh, every shared memory, was a defiance against the storm and Fletcher's malice alike. Finally, after days of white despair, the storm broke. Crimson Valley lay under a blanket of untouched snow, silent and pristine. The ranch survived, the animals fed and sheltered, the house warm despite frost clinging to the windows. Mary and Sam stepped outside, boots sinking into the fresh snow. The valley was quiet, almost holy in its stillness. They looked at one another, exhaustion and relief mingling in their eyes. "We did it," Mary said softly. Sam nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Together. Always. The danger was far from over. Fletcher had not vanished. He remained a shadow in the valley, waiting for weakness, testing them, challenging them to rise higher. But the trials of the winter had forged a bond stronger than frost, stronger than fear. For Sam and Mary, survival was no longer simply a battle against nature or man. It was a testament to trust, courage, and love. And as the valley lay silent beneath the pale winter sun, they knew one thing for certain. Nothing, not frost, fire, or Fletcher, could break what they had built together. The first signs of spring arrived slowly in Crimson Valley. Snow melted reluctantly, leaving behind mud and puddles that reflected the pale sunlight. Streams swelled with thawed snow, and the fields, once frozen solid, began to glisten with damp promise. Life stirred again, but danger had not yet left the valley. Sam and Mary had survived winter's bite, but Fletcher's shadow still loomed. Rumors in town whispered of his plotting, and his envy had grown into a dangerous obsession. The couple could feel it in the way the wind carried strange noises at night, in tracks found near barns, in doors slightly ajar when no one had visited. Fletcher was preparing his final strike. The thaw brought new challenges. Mud made travel difficult. Supplies were delayed. Livestock, though surviving the winter, were weak and in need of careful tending. Sam and Mary rose with the sun every day, hands raw from labor, but hearts steeled by necessity. Mary organized the barn and fields like a general, delegating tasks to the boys and neighbors who had come to help. Sam worked the plow, repairing fences, clearing frozen debris, and ensuring that every animal was safe. Together, they became a beacon of strength for the valley, a symbol that even the harshest winter could not crush determination and courage. Then came Fletcher's final, desperate move. One evening, as twilight painted the valley in amber and gold, Fletcher rode to the edge of Sam's land with intent more sinister than before. He had been spreading rumors, trying to sway the townsfolk against the couple, but now he sought to strike directly, cutting the feed supply, damaging fences, and attempting to scare the animals into stampeding. Mary noticed him first, eyes narrowing. "He's here," she whispered. Sam's hand tightened on the reins of his horse. "Stay calm," he said. "We've faced worse." The confrontation was swift and tense. Fletcher tried to corner the animals in a small pen, but Sam and Mary, working in perfect coordination, blocked every exit. Mary's voice rang out, firm and unyielding, commanding the boys and neighbors to secure the gates. Sam's steady presence calmed the animals and controlled Fletcher's rage. "You'll never take this ranch." Sam shouted, voice echoing across the valley. Fletcher, realizing his plan had failed, lashed out verbally, but the power had shifted. The townspeople, inspired by Mary and Sam's leadership, stood alongside them, eyes burning with shared defiance. Fletcher had no support, no advantage, no leverage. For the first time, he understood he was defeated. Spring light warmed the valley, and the first crops were planted. Mary oversaw the seedlings, her hands careful, her eyes full of hope. Sam tilled the soil side by side with her, his glance often lingering, filled with quiet admiration and something deeper, a feeling neither of them had dared to name aloud until now. Evenings were no longer filled with fear or whispered threats. Instead, they shared small joys, laughter over minor mishaps, quiet talks by the fire, and the simple pleasure of watching animals frolic in the thawed fields. One night, under the soft glow of the moon, Sam took Mary's hand as they walked along the fence line. "We've come through everything," he said quietly. "Winter, Fletcher, the storms, and still here we are." Mary squeezed his hand. "Yes," she replied, "and I wouldn't trade a moment of it because we did it together. Every step, every challenge, it brought us here." Sam looked into her eyes, the moonlight catching the warmth there. "Mary," he whispered, "I've loved you through it all, even when I didn't know it. You've saved me in ways no one else could." Her breath caught, and for a moment the chill, of early spring vanished. "And you've saved me, Sam," she said softly. "Gave me hope, a home, a reason to fight, a reason to love again." They leaned together, foreheads touching as if the storms, frost, and sabotage had melted away entirely. The valley around them was alive, soft under the spring light, and yet the strength they had built together was firmer than any winter ice. The townsfolk had come to admire them. Boys and girls of the valley worked in the fields, learning from Mary's diligence and Sam's quiet wisdom. Farmers came to consult with them about crops and livestock. Even those who had doubted their resilience found respect impossible to ignore. The ranch had become a nucleus of hope in the valley, a place where courage, love, and leadership thrived despite the hardships of the frontier. Fletcher, shamed and defeated, retreated from the valley entirely, leaving only whispers in the wind as a reminder of past malice. The threat was gone, finally, and Sam and Mary could breathe freely for the first time. As spring settled, the ranch began to flourish. Crops sprouted green against the thawed soil. The animals, once trembling and huddled, moved freely, their energy returning with the warmer days. Mary tended the garden, humming softly, while Sam repaired fences and barns, whistling tunes that carried across the valley. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind distant hills, Sam turned to Mary. "We've survived the winter, the storms, and the man who tried to break us. And yet here we are, stronger together." Mary leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we'll face whatever comes next," she whispered, "because nothing can break us now." They sat in quiet peace, watching the stars emerge over Crimson Valley. The snow was gone, the land was alive, and so were their hearts. For Sam and Mary, the trials of winter had forged more than survival. It had forged trust, courage, and a love that could withstand anything the frontier would throw their way. The thaw of early spring gave way to warmth that seeped into every corner of Crimson Valley. Birds returned, their songs echoing across the ranch, and streams gurgled freely where ice had held them captive for months. For Sam and Mary, this was not just the changing of seasons, it was a rebirth. Mary stepped into the garden at dawn, her hands brushing over green shoots breaking through the soft earth. The winter hardships were behind them. Every plant, every seed, symbolized survival and the promise of growth. Sam followed, carrying a basket of fresh eggs from the barn. "You've done wonders here," he said, smiling as he watched her inspect the rows of sprouts. Mary looked up, sunlight catching the copper tones of her hair. "We did it together," she replied. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." The ranch had become a beacon of hope in the valley. Neighbors came to consult Sam and Mary about crops, livestock, and repairs. The boys who had helped during the winter were now learning responsibility and skill under their guidance. Mary's courage and determination had inspired many, showing that leadership did not require arrogance or harshness, just resolve, kindness, and intelligence. Fletcher, the last shadow of winter's menace, had left the valley quietly. Rumors said he had moved west, defeated, his threats extinguished. The valley no longer feared him. The couple's perseverance had sent a clear message. Malice could not survive where courage and love thrived. The first harvest arrived in early June, golden and abundant. Sam and Mary walked through the fields, the wheat bending in the warm breeze. Their hands touched, fingers intertwining naturally, the rhythm of life and love as steady as the land itself. Neighbors and townsfolk gathered to celebrate. Tables were laden with fresh bread, roasted meats, and fruits from the orchard that Mary had tended so carefully. Laughter echoed across the valley, warm and unrestrained. Sam watched Mary laugh with the children, the same laugh that had once been hidden under grief, now free and radiant. "You've changed everything, Mary," he whispered as he stood beside her, watching the joy spread across the valley. "And you've given me the courage to belong somewhere," she said softly, "to call this place home, not just the land, but the people and you." Evenings became their sanctuary. The porch, once a cold, silent structure, now held firelight, soft conversation, and the quiet rhythm of life fully returned. Stars stretched across the horizon as Sam and Mary sat close, sharing their stories, dreams, and plans for the future. Sam leaned back, hat tipped over his eyes, and said quietly, "When I first met you, I thought I was saving you. Turns out you saved me." Mary rested her head on his shoulder, warmth flooding through her. "We saved each other," she murmured, "and now we can finally build something lasting." The ranch flourished, crops thrived, animals grew strong, and the house resonated with laughter, the sound of community, and the quiet satisfaction of two hearts mended through shared struggle. Sam repaired old fences, built new barns, and supervised the farmhands, but he always made time to walk the fields with Mary. Mary's leadership became the heart of the valley. She helped organize local trade, advised on planting schedules, and even mediated disputes among neighbors. Her presence brought harmony, and the valley began to see her not just as a widow of misfortune, but as a cornerstone of strength and vision. Their love had matured quietly, but with unshakable depth. It was no longer tentative or fragile. It was steadfast, built on trust, shared hardship, laughter, and moments of intimate understanding. One late afternoon, Sam and Mary walked to the hill overlooking the valley. Golden light spilled over the ranch, the streams, and the distant mountains. Sam stopped, taking Mary's hands in his. "Crimson Valley has tested us," he said softly, eyes meeting hers. "But nothing will ever shake us again. Will you promise me, no matter what comes next, we face it together?" Mary smiled, tears glinting in the sunlight. "Always," she said. They embraced, the wind whispering through the tall grass, carrying away the ghosts of winter and Fletcher's spite. The valley, once shadowed by hardship, now thrived under the stewardship of love, courage, and hope. As harvest season drew to a close, the couple hosted a small festival for the valley. Children ran through fields, neighbors shared food and stories, and the ranch, once a lonely expanse of frozen land, became a gathering place of joy and life. Sam and Mary watched from the porch, hands intertwined, hearts full. "This," Sam said quietly, "is what it's always been for. Not the land, not the house, not even the crops, but this." Mary leaned close, being here, together, and giving life, hope, and love back to this valley. They laughed, a full, unrestrained sound, mingling with the wind and the rustle of wheat. The past hardships, the storms, Fletcher's sabotage, winter's cruelty, were now memories that had forged them, but did not define them. Crimson Valley was alive, the community thriving, and the ranch, their home, a testament to endurance, trust, and love. Sam and Mary, standing together against the horizon, had found more than survival. They had found forever.